The comment period opens on Monday, which is February 12th, and you'll have 60 days to say whatever it is you want to say, either for or against. Now, this one is a bit weird, as these proposed changes are sort of playing catch up with what was already passed. It involved a ton of legal mumbo jumbo, and I'm going to read it straight from the horse's mouth so I don't oversimplify or breeze past something that affects you. So let's go ahead and jump right into that. The Department of Veteran Affairs proposes to amend its adjudication regulations relating to exposure to certain herbicide agents to incorporate the provisions of the Blue Water Navy Vietnam Veterans Act of 2019, and there are much more here, specifically by extending the presumed area of exposure to the offshore waters of the Republic of Vietnam, defining the boundaries, that's a big part here, of the offshore water. So what does service in Vietnam actually look like is what they're proposing to change. Expanding the date ranges for presumptive of exposure in the Korean DMZ, and establish entitlement to spina bifida, I hope I said that right, benefits for children of certain veterans who served in Thailand. So a lot of Southeast Pacific here. This rule also proposes to codify a presumptive of exposure to certain herbicide agents for locations published on the DoD's record of locations where certain herbicide agents were used, tested, or stored outside of Vietnam. Tons of Vietnam implications here. In addition, this rule also proposes to codify long-standing procedures for searching for payees entitled to class action settlements. Payments align with this case, and proposes to apply the definition of the Republic of Vietnam's offshore waters to claims for presumptive service connection for non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. VA is also proposing, so that's the first section here. The second section, VA is also proposing to amend its adjudication regulations concerning presumptive service connection for diseases associated with exposure to certain herbicide agents. This amendment implements provisions of the FY21 NDAA, that's National Defense Authorization Act, which added bladder cancer, hypothyroidism, and Parkinson's as medical conditions eligible for presumptive service connection. Finally, this rulemaking proposes to implement certain provisions of this is the PACT Act, specifically by recognizing hypertension and MGUS as diseases eligible for presumptive of exposure to certain herbicides, and adding new locations as eligible for presumptive of exposure to certain herbicides during specific timeframes. Now, this mostly affects Vietnam, Korean era veterans, and anyone who was exposed to various herbicides that have those conditions. Okay, now I'm gonna leave the link to this Federal Register in the pinned comments below, but I want to show you something that if you do click on this to read it yourself, scroll through all of this down here towards the bottom, you'll find actual locations with flat and longs. Here it is. So if you have a question on what that looks like, I would go ahead and check that out. And then secondly, if you want a list of conditions, here they are right here. So word search diseases subject to presumptive service connection. And here's a long list of diseases here, okay? And it keeps going with various notes. So if that affects you, absolutely look into this. And I'll tell you, of the proposed changes we've seen for mental health, tinnitus, and sleep apnea, I do think mental health and tinnitus are pretty solid. The sleep apnea one definitely sucks. But these proposed changes are just kind of playing catch up with what was already passed, and it is a huge win for veterans and the VA.